What's happening, my car audio enthusiast? Today we're going to talk a little bit about 6.5-inch drivers. And they might seem to be in a common place as a 6.5-inch driver is a 6.5-inch driver. That is absolutely not how that works. So, aside from the fact that we all know there are 6.5-inch subwoofers that are like mostly magnet. The magnet will just barely fit through the hole. We're going to leave those out of the equation. And we're just going to focus on stuff that you might find in the door of a vehicle. Now, I have three different drivers here in front of me right now. One is the Audiodynamic 6.5. It's the 3000 series 6.5-inch coaxial driver. Now, coaxial means that there are two drivers together that share the same axis. That's why they call it a coaxial driver. The axis being this part that goes through the middle. Think of it as a wheel, okay? And this being the axle, okay? Then this is the axle, then the wheel will roll this way, right? Well, there's two things on this axle, co-axis. So that's why they call it a coaxial driver. And there's a tweeter and a midwoofer. Nice little fabric surround, which is ridiculously tough. And these are some really, really, really good sounding drivers. They are pricey, but if you're looking for some really good drivers that can take really good power, get pretty loud, and sound amazing, this is a great place to start. The Audiodynamics 3000 series coaxial driver. And don't count out the 1000 and 2000 series also. The only real difference between them two is they handle a little less power than this guy does. But if you're running off of deck power or say, less than 100 watts per channel, they'll do just fine. And they sound awesome. Next, we're going to move on to make sure I got the name right, Alfred Audio DefBonce mid-range speaker. This is the MM60 V2. And what this is a mid-range driver. More commonly, people will call this a pro audio driver, in that it's a mid-range driver that is really productive. It doesn't take much power to get the efficiency of this is high, so it doesn't take much power to get a lot of volume out of it. And usually with this type of driver, you get a lot of efficiency, but you give up some sound quality. Now, I have found with these particular drivers, this M60 V2 or MM60 V2, that that's not the case. This is a phenomenally good sounding mid-range driver. And I don't remember the price on them, but they're not terribly expensive at all. And they do get quite loud. And I was running two of these in my Tahoe. Both of them are still good. I have both of them now. They both play just fine. They take good power. They get very loud. And they have a nice, smooth sounding mid-range. Even very low volumes, low to mid volumes, they sound really, really good. They're nice and warm. You'll want to EQ the 1000 hertz or so, EQ that 1000 hertz down a little bit, because they do have a prominent, between 1000 and 2000 hertz, they really come to life. So you'll want to dampen that down a little bit. But if you want to rock out hard, some guitar, some really impactful vocals and high drums and whatnot, these guys know how to do that. They will project quite well across the parking lot. Third on our list today is another Alfred Audio Machete series. And this one is the LW65A4. This guy. And I believe it's a 4-ohm, 150 watts max, so 70, 75 watts RMS. You can put a little more on that if if you watch your bandwidth and don't try to get it to play too low. But these guys are kind of an interesting little woofer. And I say that because they don't do, all right, I put them in my doors, and I absolutely could not get any bass whatsoever out of these things in my doors. That said, they're not a free air driver, and to get bass out of a driver in a free air environment like a door card, it needs to be a free air driver. Elsewise, it's not going to have any structural integrity. But what's interesting about these things, even though they're billed as a woofer, and I mean they're very much built like a woofer. They're a lot of magnet, a lot of surround, a good amount of throw. What's interesting about them is, even though I couldn't get any real bass out of them in my doors, I got really good 500 hertz up to about 1,000 hertz. There was just so much luscious low end mid bass. Up above where you would play 100, 200 hertz, it was just gone. But up above that, in the low human voice register, they really produce a lot of warm sound. What we're going to talk about is the differences. So these are all 6.5s. They all are completely different speakers. This is essentially taking the place of a little tiny, like a 3-inch mid-range, something you would have. This is a big version of that. And it will play, they kind of surprisingly, these will play 60, 70 hertz, no problem. And they produce bass quite well. They're not designed for that. They're not, and if you look up the crossovers on them, they're not even recommended for that. It says they're rated for 90 watts RMS at 4 ohms. But yeah, I can see that, no problem. Probably even more. But they're even though they're not recommended to play low, they do a pretty darn good job of it. But they're a completely different driver from this one. 2 6.5-inch drivers from the same company that are not even remotely close to being the same type of driver. Now, having said that, there are other key differences that you need to consider if you're going to use a 1 6.5 driver in a different spot. So normally most 6.5-inch drivers are going to be this size, this type of a driver. As you can see, they're not even remotely close. This thing's a whole lot bigger. It's a whole lot deeper front to back. And it's a whole lot heavier as well. And when you mount this driver in a location, all of your heavy magnet subwoofers will try to separate from their mounting surface on the bottom because the driver wants to go that way. See? So the top is going to be, it's always wanting to pull away like this. Okay? So when you mount this thing on something, you've got to have a very solid mounting location. If you try to mount this on just a plastic panel, it's not going to work. Not going to work out for you. It's a bad idea. So you got to have a solid mounting surface. This thing weighs, at least a couple pounds, if not more. It's pretty heavy. This one, on the other hand, is a similar thing, but not quite as heavy. And it's also, the magnet doesn't carry the weight quite so far back. It still wants to tip this way, but it is what it is. So the weight characteristics, also the depth. If you're mounting this in your door, you got to make sure you have room for your window to roll down, or else your window will be hitting the speaker. That's not good. You'll break your glass, or all kinds of problems. So you got to consider the mounting depth. But that isn't even the thing that That isn't even the big deal. The big deal is, besides the tonal characteristics, which are drastic, and the weight and the mounting depth, is they're not all the same size. That's right. Um, this driver will fit in the same hole as this driver. Okay? It's tight. It's a tiny bit bigger than this, but it will fit in the standard hole made for this driver. This will fit snugly. This one, on the other hand, will not. You're going to have to make the hole about 1/4 of an inch bigger, because the driver's basket and the way it's designed will absolutely impact the hole. Something we don't think about. Now, in some cases, in a lot of cases, making the hole slightly bigger, just a matter of a little sandpaper, maybe, a file, whatever, a little grinding around it, round it out, fit it in there. But it might be your factory door location. If you got a factory location that one of these fits into, there's a real good chance this is not going to fit. Now, what you can do is, I do love the fact that they've got 8 screw locations. But what you can do is use I don't have any, you can use a 6-inch ring. So you get a little thin, like a 3/8 thin, or 1/4 inch, or 1/2 inch even, a 6.5 inch mounting ring. And then you put that in behind here. And if it's wallowed out enough to fit around this, then you could attach it to your factory location and then attach the driver to it. Because of the way that the basket runs out this way, by the time you space the driver up just a little bit, it allows room for the basket to fit into the door frame. Regardless, make sure you sound deaden the crap out of your doors, no matter what you do. But just know that when you order or buy a 6.5 inch driver, you gotta watch, because they're not all that's going to fit in the same hole. It's just something to consider. Anyway, this is my little lesson on 6.5 inch drivers, and what is good and bad, and the different elements that you need to look out for whenever you're installing them. Anyway, guys, peace.